I put my whole life savings into this business. And overnight, literally, we started getting the calls where it was like, Amy, I love you and I want to work with you, and I love Darren and I want to work with him. But until we see what happens in the next 2.5 years. And that was the thing, 2.5 years. It was like always, if I hear the word 2.5 years ever again, I'm going to scream. That's like burned into my memory. It was like, yeah, in 2.5 years, we can pick this back up again.
Welcome to the top. Oh, yeah. We're killing annual quotas. It's the 1%er show, in case you haven't noticed.
Welcome to the top. I'm your host, Paul Salamanca, VP of Global Accounts at Security Scorecard. With me is the co-host, Tom Bocard, Senior VP of Sales at Global Data. And we have a very special guest that we'll get to in a little bit, Amy Volas, founder and CEO of Avenue Talent Partners. So you may know Amy from LinkedIn. You'll see her dropping real, actionable tips, making you quickly recognize that she is the real deal. She knows what she's talking about. She's mastered not only her craft of helping startups hire sales leaders, but she's mastered the art of sales. Amy is a co-host of this small little gathering you may or may not have heard of, Thursday Night Sales, and it starts probably in about 2 hours. So we should get going here, Tom.
Right? Like, I'm a super ambitious person.
Yeah.
And for me, work and business, the question you asked me yesterday, where you're like, who are you really? I'm like, business is personal for me. I come from a long lineage of entrepreneurial minded people. My dad, several times over, my grandfather is like, who he was is like everything to me. And he's fascinating to me, or he was fascinating to me, where he had an 8th grade education. He was a Depression baby, and he was a World War II fighter pilot. And he was a titan of his industry, and he had all these really cool stories. And when I was a kid, and I posted this on LinkedIn recently, where one of the lessons I grew up with was children should be seen and not heard. I would be at this like dinner table with all these executives having no idea who they were. And you'd have to look them in the eye, and you'd have to have your manners on, and you'd have to, like all of that. And it just sitting back and listening, all this stuff that I think just kind of resonated with me as a young kid.
Yeah.
Carried over. So Darren goes, and Darren was in a very different place in his life than I was. So he was single, he was traveling the world, he was in Asia for a long time. I was married, had a house, like doing the whole thing. And we stayed in touch. And every time we would get together, we would talk, I always felt just sort of the sadness of, God, I miss what we were doing. And not that I didn't love what I was doing at Yahoo, I really did. And it was really good to me. But at the same time, I was like, I want more, and I want to do it on my terms. And I'm sick of like getting caught up in red tape that I personally don't feel like is necessary. And so Darren and I were talking. And every time we were talking, it was becoming much more prominent of, well, what we did there, we could totally do it better on our terms. And all those relationships were still relationships that I had that were still calling me and asking me for advice. And I was like, how do we not monetize this? Like, I just feel like
this guy, Darren wasn't the owner or founder of the other company?
No, he was my boss. Okay. No, he was like a SVP.
Got it.
And so, so we kept talking, and all of a sudden it was like my husband, who's a CPA, and Darren and we had a very real conversation about like, maybe we need to do this. And this was in 2007, like late 2007, early 2008, and then kind of like spring, summer of 2008. And I remember going to Starbucks and getting with an executive coach with Darren to talk about like, what did we want to name the company? Like, if we were going to do this, like all those things. And it became very clear to me, like, let's do this. And so for me, I'm like full throttle kind of gal. Like, I appreciate a side hustle like anybody, but for me, like, I have laser sharp focus on what I'm doing, and it's hard for me to get involved in anything else. And so I was starting to feel that with like, this feels weird to like sit with you at Starbucks to talk about trademarks and this and that. And like, this just feels really strange to me. And I feel like I'm cheating on Yahoo, but like all those things. And so it became very, very clear, long story short, that Mama was going to have to jump off the cliff and dive back into the pool with my good old boy, Darren. And so we started Broadpath. I left Yahoo on great terms.
Yep.
They didn't want me to go, but they understood that I needed to do this for myself, and they were super supportive. So
that's awesome.
Darren and I do this very quickly because we were known in the industry that we were in, and I had all these relationships, and this is why the power of relationships is good, people. But these people were fantastic, and I quickly had a multi-7-figure pipeline right in front of me. Well, if we go back to 2008, friends, not a fun year on the backside of 2008, meaning that's an election year. And at the same time, the economy fell apart for a few different reasons, mostly around the housing market, but also for insurance and for automotive. And I remember watching on the TV all the auto execs being flown to testify. Well, here's how that affected me. We were in managed care. Managed care is part of healthcare. And part of what was a big topic of debate was what's going to happen to our healthcare system. And that, coupled with the economy falling apart, coupled with the automotives almost buckling, this was a big deal. And for my customers, their largest clients were the automotive companies. Plus, it was an election year, plus healthcare reform, plus. And so overnight, like literally, like it felt like less than 10 days. It was like that, like everything is like, all the stars are aligning, like all the, you know, that feeling where like, yes,
Yeah.
You're basically like about to go close one. Like, I mean, literally. Like,
Yep.
And
so up until this point, you're running on savings, right? You're not paying yourself, or are you? How's that working out?
No. I'm not paying anything. No, I mean, I was one half of the investment, and we were very, very, very big advocates of bootstrapping, not taking any outside money. And we wanted to keep it that way. And so I put my whole life savings into this business. And overnight, literally, we started getting the calls where it was like, Amy, I love you and I want to work with you, and I love Darren and I want to work with him. But until we see what happens in the next 2.5 years. And that was the thing, 2.5 years. It was like always, if I hear the word 2.5 years ever again, I'm going to scream. That's like burned into my memory. It was like, yeah, in 2.5 years, we can pick this back up again. No matter what I did, no matter who I called, no matter what I tried to do, no matter what Darren tried to do. Like it just, at some point, things get bigger than you, no matter how good you are in the work that you do. And it's like the Kenny Rogers song, sometimes you have to know when to fold them. And so I started noticing the signs for myself. Like I know when I'm super bought into something and when I should be doing what I'm doing and when I'm on the right course. And I just felt like it was way bigger than me. And I started feeling really helpless. And I started feeling like it was a no-win situation. And I was having lots of conversations with my husband, lots of hard stuff, lots of all sorts of feelings, and knowing that it was probably time to play the Kenny Rogers song. It was time to fold them. And I will never forget, I was in an Office Depot parking lot bawling, calling Darren and being like, I'm out. Like, I can't do this. And that sucked. I think I just felt really defeated, and I don't think any of us love when you feel that way. And so because Yahoo was really good to me and I left on a really good note, I had to eat crow and I went back because it was a recession, right? 2008 was a recession. And I was fortunate enough to be able to slide right back in. But when you go back to something, as much as Yahoo was great and I loved the team, it wasn't the same. It just wasn't. And I knew that this was going to be a bridge. This wasn't going to be a long-term thing. And I don't think I realized it at the time, but I knew, and I wasn't surprised. And so I went back to what was familiar, to what I knew would take care of me, to what I knew I could be good at, to build up some confidence again.
So today we talked a lot about resilience and how that applies to sales. Whether you started your own business or not, you still treat the sales process as your business, your process. It's your customer. You own the relationship. You own the territory. You own the number. You own the results, good or bad. So take ownership of your career, take ownership of your life, invest in yourself, and take it to the top. So as a wise man once said, I believe it's Nas, he said, why shoot the breeze about it when you can be about it?
Welcome to the top.
Oh, yeah.
We killing annual quotas. It's the 1%er show, in case you haven't noticed.